What up, everybody? Good morning and happy Wednesday. It's Making the Turn Wednesday coming at you. Appreciate you tuning in wherever, however you're tuning in. If it's on the radio dials, 105.1 FM, 790 AM. Also available online at sportstalk.com. Stream it up over there. Video streams are also up and rolling on Facebook and YouTube here this morning. So multiple different ways for you to join in on the convo here. What do we got on a good old what do we got on a good old game plan for us this morning? Well, the NFL trade deadline came and passed, and Packers did, but sellers moving on from Preston Smith. Preston Smith was a guy that was kind of mentioned in some possible trade rumblings out there for the past couple weeks, past few weeks. There was reports that teams had been inquiring with the Packers, about Preston Smith, and I don't think it should be too big of a surprise, considering seeing the production lately. Heck, even seeing the playing time lately. I mean, you go back to this previous game against Detroit. I mean, we talked about it the other day. Preston Smith, play wise, percentage wise, just 21 snaps on defense. Van Ness had a couple more. Kingsley Enagbare had a couple more. Even saw Mosby getting some reps over there too. So probably shouldn't be that big of a surprise. Maybe it is for a little for some out there, considering the Packers need some pass rush help, but they really weren't getting it from Preston Smith. So Preston Smith gone to Pittsburgh for a seventh round pick in the 2020 NFL draft. So Preston was also one of the older players on this roster, so that youth movement continues to go here for the Packers. Brandon McManus is the oldest at 33. Eric Wilson, linebackers at 30. And then those are your only two aged 30 or higher. So, what are your thoughts on the move? Brian Gutekunst chatted with the media yesterday, talking about the move and talked about the trading deadline a little bit. We'll hear from him a little bit later on this morning, but Goody saying we're excited to see both those guys talking about uh, Lucas Van Ness and Kingsley Enagbare. See some more snaps, he said. I think certainly they've earned it. I thought they did a really nice job in training camp, and they've continued that through practice. He was also talking about Aaron Mosby and Brenton Cox Jr. too. So, but he went on to say allowing these two guys to get on the field a little bit more and maybe some snaps to get to some of the other guys too, I think will help us. So, what else did Goody have to say yesterday? We'll again hit that up coming up here in just a little bit. But since the Packers are on a bye week, gave you this assignment yesterday. So we've got 8 more games left to go here. We know how tough this NFC is, especially the NFC North. With these 8 games left to go, what's that win-loss record that you think the Packers have bare minimum, not what you don't necessarily think is gonna be the record, but what do you think that bare minimum has to be for the Packers to just get into the postseason? Not necessarily win the division, but to get into the postseason. Because as things stand right now at that halfway mark, as we're making a turn to the second half of the season, if the playoffs started today, Green Bay would hold on to that final spot. Even with a 6-3 record, they would be at that final spot. Now, they got a little bit of a cushion, not much. Chicago's in that 8th spot with a 4-4 record. So we'll see how things shake out this weekend without Green Bay and everybody kind of catches up and such. See, is it a 5-4 record? Is it a 4-5? That'll be the next closest one because you got the Rams sitting at 4-4 and San Francisco, sitting at 4-4 as well. So, but what do you think that record? How many more wins does Green Bay have to have in their final 8? Bare minimum, bare minimum for you to feel confident or feel good that they're going to be able to get into this postseason in this what is shaping up to be a tight NFC. We know Detroit 7-1 at the top. You got Washington 7-2. Atlanta's leading their division, so they're the 3 seed at 6-3. Arizona's leading the West with a 5-4 record. But then your wild card teams, Minnesota 6-2, Philly 6-2, and then Green Bay 6-3. And it's an interesting schedule for the Packers. You're at Chicago, you're home against San Fran, you're home against Miami. San Francisco is going to be fighting for a playoff spot. They're getting McCaffrey back. You're at Detroit, you're at Seattle, against New Orleans, have Minnesota, and then you finish up against Chicago. So give me some of those numbers. What do you think? Is it five? Is it, even if they just finish 500 in their final 8 games, that would get them to 10 wins. That would be what, a 10-7 record, 10-7 record. You think they have to at least get to 11? What do you got for me? So we'll continue our bye-week chat here for the green and gold throughout this morning. What else do we got in the docket? We got the first college football playoff rankings out here. Still kind of weird to see how the brackets is shaping up and such. Do you ever think Wisconsin's gonna get into that bracket? Badger fans out there? I don't know, but, your top teams, Oregon, the college football playoff rankings, Oregon's number 1, Ohio State's number 2, Georgia 3, Miami 4, over there, so but, the projected bracket right now, would be you've got, Oregon as the top seed, Ohio State actually would be, the 5 seed in this because you got Oregon in there, you're looking at conference champs. So, actually, your top 4, seeds in the bracket would be Oregon, Georgia, Miami, BYU, but then Ohio State would play Boise State, and then if they were to win, they would play against BYU and such, so, but the rest of the bracket would be Indiana's a 9 taking on number 8, Tennessee. Number 6, Texas, taking on number 11, Alabama, and then Penn State as a 7, taking on number 10, Notre Dame. Number 10, Notre Dame. First team out is SMU, second team out is Texas A&M. Notre Dame in there right now with, they're first in the FBS independent, if you will, so but I got a game, I know I'm looking forward to that, Army game coming up a little bit later on in the season for them. They should be able to handle Florida State coming up, then Virginia and such. But anyways, we'll hit a little college football talk on that over there too. So Bucks won't be back in action until tomorrow, taking on the Utah Jazz. But how big of a how big of a maybe next few games is this for the Bucks when we kind of take a look at what's at stake? Yesterday we were talking about history is not on their side, right? Teams who start off 1-6, history tends to show that, that might be a big hill to climb for the Bucks to get to the postseason there. But looking at the schedule, you've got the Jazz coming to Milwaukee. Is it too early to say it's a must win right now, for the Bucks heading into the 8th game of the season? After that, you got at New York and then you're Boston. So yeah, I kinda feel like this one against Utah is a must win. Now, I feel like if they pull off 5 in a row with the win against New York and Boston, maybe things start to settle down and they calm down a little bit for the Bucks and start to play a little bit more relaxed and start to just overall play some better ball, but given everything that we have seen so far from this Bucks team, I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that one either, so but we'll throw some hoops in there. For making the turn Wednesday, it's kinda a little bit of a stock reportish day here too. Whose stock is rising right now? So usually Tuesdays, it's a grind my gears. It's kind of a negative day, you're, like, trying to get something off your chest or venting a little frustration and such. But how about on Wednesdays, since we're making a turn, we're heading towards the weekend, halfway through this week, thinking positively, whose stock right now do you think is on the up, is on the rise? Team-wise, player-wise, whoever it is in the sports world, whose stock is rising? Make your pick by hitting me up with a text 715-830-1912 on that, Shoe Doctors bullpen line. So we'll get to that, and we might get into a little baseball talk a little bit later on here too. So, but hey, let's get things going here this morning. We'll open it up, continuing our bye week talk with the Packers. We'll hear from Brian Gutekunst in his press conference yesterday, the bye week press conference that just happens to be also at the end of a trade deadline day where the Packers moved on from Preston Smith, the last player in that free agency class that Goody put together in 2019 when brought in Preston, Darius, Adrian Amos, and Billy Turner. So, but we'll break it all down. And what are your thoughts on the Preston Smith trade? And are you disappointed that Green Bay wasn't more aggressive at the trade deadline? Hit me up, 715-830-1912 on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line with a quick text. We'll take our first break and then get the leadoff going here this morning. We'll be back in just a few minutes. This time on Monday, we are going to be over at Hy-Vee doing the program for their Veterans Day breakfast. We've been doing this the last couple of years, doing a show from Hy-Vee for their Veterans Day breakfast. So if you are a veteran or active serving member, stop on by, grab some free breakfast starting at 6 a.m. on Monday for Veterans Day. So hopefully we'll see a lot of you down over there. Again, that's coming up this Monday, November 11th, starting at 6 a.m. Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. All right, let's get things rolling here this morning. First up, before we dive into this, let's hear from Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst yesterday, holding his annual bye week presser that just happened to land on the trade deadline day in a move where, well, the Packers ended up making a move too. So, audio courtesy, Packers.com. Here's general manager Brian Gutekunst yesterday. All right, so that's just a little bit from Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst yesterday, talking about the move from Preston Smith and getting some opportunities for the younger guys. So let's begin there. First of all, the move with trading Preston Smith. Preston Smith was a guy that if you'd been kind of following along a little bit online with some of the trade rumors, I know rumors don't necessarily always pan out, or reports aren't always true and such when it comes to trade stuff and that. But Preston Smith was a name that was mentioned from the national peeps, the talking heads out there, the insiders, that there was teams inquiring about the availability of Preston Smith. So on one hand, that shouldn't be that big of a surprise. But then you also look at the production of Preston Smith so far this year and kind of take a look at it. And I mean, he's been a guy too that I think a lot of Packers fans have been wondering where's he been at this year, right? I mean, where's it's been pretty darn quiet for Preston Smith. Does have 2.5 sacks, but just 6 tackles so far this year. And you look at the play time. I mean, his snaps have been cut down. Playing time has been cut down just as recently as this last game here. So the writing to me was kind of on the wall here. And here's another nugget here too. This is from Aaron Schatz. He had tweeted out, just looked for the pass rush win rate. Preston Smith is at 10.4% this year, which is low. I mean, that is very low. The thing is, it's the same exact one as Za'Darius Smith so far this year. Now, Za'Darius has more sacks. Does he benefit, though, from playing opposite of Myles Garrett? Yeah, probably. Probably a little bit there. But it's clear that, I mean, Preston Smith, who's going to be 32 here in just, next week, couple weeks here, yeah, on that Chicago game. To me, it was clear the writing was on the wall. And Packers are going to take a little bit of a dead cap hit with his contracts. But it felt like if there was going to be a time that the Packers were going to move on from Preston Smith, it was probably going to be this upcoming offseason. So at this point, Green Bay electing to get a 7th round pick. And I know people are going to say a 7th round pick. Couldn't get more. Couldn't get more in return. I mean, it's whatever the market dictates at this point. If Preston Smith was playing a little bit better, probably would have gotten better compensation. But at the same time, if Preston Smith's playing a little bit better, you're probably not trading him because your pass rush, you need help over there. Now, Goody mentions Mosby, Aaron Mosby, and Britton Cox Jr. as guys getting a little bit more involved in the rotation. We saw Aaron last week getting a half sack, credited with a half sack with Rashawn Gary going up against Detroit there. And Aaron spent a little time a couple years ago with Carolina and such, so he's not a rookie, but he's been in the league, practice squad and such for the last couple of years. I'd like to sit here and say that I'm excited to see Aaron and Britton, getting some opportunities and getting involved in the rotation more. The thing is I don't know what to expect from them. I don't. I'd love to sit here and say, oh, finally going to get this guy more reps. It's about time. He deserves them. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work, and I don't know if they're going to improve the pass rush. You hope that's going to be the case. You hope with more opportunities for those youngsters that they're going to be able to take those opportunities and run and make the most of them. I don't know. I have no idea if it's going to work or not. But I understand it. I understand giving more reps to your other guys, and at this point too, giving more reps to Lucas Van Ness. Lucas Van Ness has not been playing well. Let's call a spade a spade. He has not been playing well. Will more opportunities and more experience help him out? Hopefully, that's the optimistic approach. But right now, in his reps, we haven't seen a whole lot to be excited about. Same for Enagbare. So I get that Green Bay wants to give those guys more reps. They want to get them on the field more, get them more experience, because then they're hoping that those reps and that experience will help them be better football players and just continue to get better and essentially getting that pass rush a little bit better. I don't know if it's going to work. You don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to work. They don't know if it's going to work. I hope it does. I really do. I hope it does. But essentially, we're in a wait and see mode now. But this does put more pressure. So on one hand, guys like Lucas Van Ness and Enagbare and such, you're going to get more playing time. But the other part of this too is you got more pressure on your shoulders. You better perform. This defense needs you to perform. This team needs you to perform. The defensive front has to get better overall. Pressure, stopping the run, it has to be better. So while you're getting more opportunities and you're going to be getting more playing time, that pressure now is more on you. Or is on you more. Use proper English, Dan. So you better run with it. You better run with it. Goody also said allowing these two guys to get on the field a little bit, maybe some snaps to go with the other guys, I think will help us. When asked that, Hafley's defense not yet having a, quote, that real breakout game, Goody says he does feel like it's coming, quote, from that entire group. We need more from those guys as we move forward into the second half of the season, and I think we will get that. I like the way they work. They've got to continue to keep pushing. Now with Smith moving on, you're taking away a veteran, locker room presence type of guy, well respected. From all accounts, players loved Preston Smith and all that sort of stuff. But that, that's the nature of the game. That's the nature of sports. It happens. Players in that locker room may suck. It may sting a little bit. Now, on the one hand, they do have a bye, so they can let those, sadness feelings or whatever you want to call them kind of, move on and go through the grieving process and such. But it's the name of the game, and a lot of these guys have been through this. They know the routine. They know the drill. Other guys got to fill that void. And I think they've got plenty. I know some people were kind of talking about, well, you're losing a leader in that locker room. But you look across, that roster, and you look across those, those different players, there's other dudes that can step up and should step up. I mean, first you start with your quarterback and Jordan Love. Kenny Clark is still there. Elton Jenkins, a guy like Rashawn Gary's got to step up, and it has been stepping up in a little bit more of a leadership role. Xavier McKinney, Josh Jacobs, et cetera, et cetera. So they still have veterans, even though they're the youngest team, and they got actually a little bit younger with Preston Smith moving on. Still got veterans on this team that can continue that leadership voice. So I'm not really concerned about that. I know some people were at least on social media talking about the concern level of, losing another leader in that locker room. I think they got guys. They've got guys in there that can step up into that role. Little later on, Goody's press conference, he talked about the team and the outlook for the rest of this season, sitting there at 6-3 with 8 games left to go. He said, "We've got to continue to come together as a football team and play better football at times, but we're 6-3. I think we're in a good spot. More consistency and maybe a little bit better in situational football is the goal. To go deep into playoffs and to contend for championships, you have to be that kind of team. We're working towards that, and I think these guys have had really good moments, but you've got to be consistent with that. You've got to be able to call upon that whenever you need it." And I would agree. And I think he hit on a lot of stuff that a lot of Packers fans have clamored for and talked about too. Situational football, consistency, big things that a lot of fans have been critical of, wanting to see better from this team. And I think he's right. I think he's spot on. So with that being said, sitting there at 6-3, and you look at these final 8 games with this tight NFC, especially this tight division, how many more wins is it going to take, in your opinion, for Green Bay to hit that postseason, to get back to the postseason? Because I don't think there's a lot of room for error. We talk about that consistency, being consistent to win games. For these final 8, I truly believe it's almost going to have a college football type of feel, where there's not going to be a lot of room for error, where you can't necessarily get away from losing a few games here. If you want to comfortably, or put yourself in a position where you're confident, comfortably into that playoff chase, you got to come away with I think a winning record in these final 8, but it's a tough schedule too. It's a very tough schedule. And I don't necessarily look at the records of these teams right now. I know Chicago's kind of maybe trending downward here a little bit, but it's at Chicago. It's a division game. I throw division matchups out the window, when division rivals out the window. Let me rephrase that. I throw records of divisional matchups out the window when you get to that, because you never know. It's different. We've seen that. We know that. So you got Chicago twice on here. I'm going to throw the records out the window with those. You still got Minnesota and you still got Detroit, and those are 2 road games. So that's 4 division games coming up here. 4 divisional games, and you're already 0-2 in your own division. And both those games were on your home field. You add in San Francisco, who's, it seems like they're getting a little bit healthier. Christian McCaffrey's going to be coming back. We know the history of San Francisco and Green Bay. Miami coming in on a short week. I know Miami right now, not good. Just a couple wins here. But they present some challenges to Green Bay. Again, I think Miami's a team. Don't necessarily just pay attention to the record. Don't look at the record. They can present some challenges to Green Bay, specifically Green Bay's defense with their speed and weapons out there too. So don't just kind of chalk that one up, especially on a short week too. Now, Green Bay has the advantage because it's at home, but they're going to be coming off of a tough game against San Francisco there. And then you follow that up by going to Detroit. Then you follow that up by going to Seattle. Now, I think a positive for Green Bay in these final 8 games, I mean, first of all, you got a lot of late games, primetime games in there. Kind of weird schedule, right? You got a Sunday, Thursday, Sunday night, Monday night. Little different timing there. But what I think does benefit Green Bay a little bit here is there's not a ton of travel. Yes, you go to Seattle, you go all the way to the West Coast. But after that, you're staying in the Midwest. You're at Chicago, you're at Detroit, and you're at Minnesota. Outside of that Seattle game, you're either at home or you're going to one of your divisional opponents. So there's not a ton of travel time in there. That I think is a benefit for Green Bay in that aspect. But when we look at the standings in the NFC and we see that Detroit's number 1 at 7-1. Commanders are sitting there at 7-2. They got better by getting Marshawn Lattimore at the trade deadline. Commanders are fully going all in at this point. I know Lattimore's a little bit banged up, but Commanders taking advantage of what they have been able to do so far this season and trying to get better and keep that train rolling. You've got Atlanta, who's leading their division as a third seed, 6-3. Arizona's leading their division, 5-4. And then this is where the wild card gets a little bit jumbled up here. Minnesota, Philly, 6-2. Green Bay holding on to that final spot right now at 6-3. I think Green Bay in these final 8 games, bare minimum, in my opinion, bare minimum, have to win 5. They have to go 5-3 in these last 8 games to put them where I would feel if you can get to 11 total wins, it'd be 11-6 record. An 11-6 record, I think, will get you into the postseason. 10-7, I'd be a little bit nervous if they go 500, go 4-4. Be a little bit nervous. I think we're going to have to be doing some scoreboard watching at that point in time. But if you could go 5-3 in your final 8 and get to 11-6 overall, I feel a little bit better about that. I think, just looking at it, how things stand right now, because things will change week in, week out, right? Injuries, all that sort of stuff. But I think you got to win against New Orleans. I think you got to win against, even though you're traveling, that's Seattle. I don't want to say they're gimmies or anything like that. Chicago, can you sweep them? That's 4. Then that might be a little tough though too. Let's face it. And okay, let's just say one win against Chicago. That's 3 if you split against Chicago. You need 2 more between San Francisco, Miami, Minnesota, and Detroit. Where would those maybe come from? So it's definitely an interesting schedule. A little, I think, kind of an underrated, difficult schedule coming up for Green Bay in these final 8 games. But I think they need to at least win 5 to get to 11 wins on this season to get there. I know they made it as 9-8 last year, but considering how the NFC is playing out right now, unless a couple teams just fall flat and just completely come tumbling down, it's going to be a little bit tougher to make that postseason this year. But for them to get to being a top-tier team, to being a Super Bowl contending team, I'm going back to where we began this conversation. The defensive line, that front, has to get better. In my opinion, for this team to take that next step, yes, they got to clean up the penalties, the situational football. I mean, it's not perfect. There's a lot of things they can clean up, but I think the next step with Preston Smith being moved on, it's opening up opportunities. You're not kind of like, okay, we got to make sure we get reps for Preston in there. The young guys, here you go. Step it the heck up right now. Lucas Van Ness, spotlight's on you, man. Number 90. You're getting more of an opportunity. You are a first-round pick. There's a lot of frustration amongst Packers fans right now from his play. And he was a guy that I think a lot of us in the preseason, in the offseason, were looking at as a guy that was going to benefit from this style of defense, and we have yet to really see that. Will more opportunities for him, more snaps for him, help him hit what we hit that potential or hit, that level that we expect from him? It better. It better, because Packers need it. I don't want to put a lot of, no offense to the two guys, but I don't want to put a lot of trust and faith into Aaron Mosby and Cox Jr. I don't want to. I hope they come out, and if they get more opportunities, I hope they ball out, and I hope they're nice surprises. I just don't know, because we see them in preseason, and we hear good things in training camp, but we hear that for a lot of guys. I don't know. I until I see it, I can't be excited about it. I want to see Lucas Van Ness rise to the challenge in these final 8 weeks and showcase why he was a first-round pick. I know he's only in his second year, but I think now that pressure's it's on him more than what it has been so far. I gotta see more from Lucas Van Ness. I gotta see more from him. And the one thing too is, I know Green Bay does, they rotate a lot of guys with their pass rushers. I mean, when you look at the percentage and the snap counts and that, I mean, you're not going to see one of those edge guys get into the 80%, right? I mean, it's Green Bay. They've done it even with Jeff Hafley or Joe Barry. I mean, they've rotated their pass rushers, their defensive line, quite a bit. And I get it. I get it that you want to keep your guys fresh, and you want to keep, them on the field, or want to keep rotating on there so they're fresh and not overworked, and this, that, and the other thing. Okay, I understand that. But the one thing, here's the thing. I would like to see Rashan Gary on the field more than what we've seen him at before. Just for comparisons, his snap count in this game against Detroit. So Rashan Gary, he ended up having 63% of the snaps, played 63% of the snaps. Okay. If we were to power rank him, he's the top pass rusher, edge rusher, defensive end, whatever the heck we're calling it these days. Okay. But when I look at guys like Myles Garrett, for comparison, week 9, he played 77%. Week 8, 83. Week 7, 80. Week 6, 79. Okay? He's a premier pass rusher. He's their best pass rusher. He's on the field more times than not. When you go to Pittsburgh, TJ Watt, his last game, 96, 93, 83, 92. He doesn't come off the field. How about, let's go to, Maxx Crosby. Maxx Crosby never comes off the field, right? You'd be right. Maxx Crosby, his last 3 games, 100% of the snaps. In fact, the first 2 games of the season, 100% of the snaps. 83, 94. Week 4, he didn't play. His lowest was 82 in week 3. So I get you want to keep guys fresh, and you want to keep guys, near 100% as possible. But at the same time, your best players got to be on the field more times than not. And we had this discussion last year, I feel like, with Gary and such, when we looked at, or maybe it was a couple years ago, when we looked at pass rush percentages. I want to see more from Rashan. I want to see him on the field more. I want to see him wearing down tackles, offensive tackles throughout the game. If he truly is our best pass rusher and one of our best defensive players, I want to see him on the field more. Like, we got to see him on the field more. I mean, even before he got hurt, Aiden Hutchinson began the season 90, 90, 97, 87. None of these guys are in the 60s. They're on the field more times than not. The highest percentage of snaps that Rashawn Gary has played in a single game this year, 69%. That was week 3 against Tennessee. Otherwise, you're looking at 64, 66, 69, 66, 63, 66, 59, 63, 63. In fact, only one edge rusher, pass rusher, defensive end, again, whatever we want to call, eclipsed the 70% mark. That was week 1, and it was Preston Smith at 71%. I want to see Rashawn Gary on the field more. I think we need to see him on the field more. I mean, you've got Quay Walker out there as a linebacker playing 100% of the snaps. You've got Jair when he's out there. I mean, he's got a few games here where it's 100% of the snaps. Keyshawn Nixon, same thing. They're running around. Xavier McKinney, he's played in 100% of the snaps in every single dang game so far. Got to see more from Gary. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll finish up the first hour here after these quick words. It's about that time of year again where we are making our lists of what to get for who this Christmas season. And this year, let's think outside the box a bit. No more of those same old Christmas gifts. Do your shopping with Resonance Branding Company. Whether you are an employer looking for gifts to give to all your employees, or you want to get them some shirts or maybe some tumblers made up for your family and friends, Resonance Branding Company has something for everyone. And if you order now, from now until November 15th, that's coming up next week, okay? Mention the code word Casper and they will give you 10% off your order. Check them out today by visiting resonancebrandingcompany.com or stop by their shop at 1728 Spooner Avenue, Suite C in Altoona. Good idea for maybe some employers looking for some new shirts or just looking to get some gifts for your employees this year. Do a nice gesture for your employees this year. They deserve it. So, all right. Coming up next hour, we'll throw a little hoops talk in there. We'll talk a little college football as well with the college football brackets and the first rankings coming out there too. So, a couple texts here. C-Bomb says 11 wins to get in. 10 would be a possibility, which with a bunch of tiebreakers. Win 5 more, and we are dancing. We've got Jeremy saying, "I'm hoping they move Walker to the outside backer. I am on the side of Quay. Had been put in the wrong position. Yeah, I think so too, man. They can let Jamin Davis and Cooper get more snaps inside too. I'll be curious to see what their plan is for Davis coming up here. Win total, Jeremy says 10, but if they get to 11, I would have no doubt in my mind they would be in. Let's finish up the first hour here with Morgan. Good morning, Morgan.
It's flannel weather finally.
It is.
You're busting it out.
I like my flannel.
Now, is that a new flannel?
It is,
I thought it looked,
yeah.
it looks a little crispy.
Yeah.
Yeah?
It is a new flannel, so I like it.
Are you going flannel all winter? Are you flannels over hoodies, or do you still lean hoodies in a pinch if you had to pick one for fall attire?
Hoodie, because it's just easy to go in and out.
Okay.
You know.
So your classic hoodie over flannel?
Yeah.
I think as people get older, they become flannel people instead of hoodie people, though.
I would agree with that.
It seems to be like you morph into that eventually.
It's probably harder to get in over your head a little bit, right?
You know you're old when it becomes too difficult to put a hoodie on anymore.
Need
And you
to
start to
zip
reach,
up.
and a zip flannel. That's what
There
we
we
need.
go.
That's what we've come to.
Yep, exactly.
So are you looking into the draft already? Do you get excited now, even though it's like in April? Is that something you look forward to thinking about? And because they're getting Green Bay ready right now.
Yeah. I haven't really thought about it. I mean, I'm going. I've already got my hotels and that, so but it hasn't really hit me yet.
So what in that environment do you like to be part of the fervor? Like if there's a big event like that, like say, let's just pontificate and pretend like the Packers win the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go to the victory parade, or is that too much for you?
I did that.
Okay.
I went to Return to Lambeau in 10.
Because I was at school
younger,
in Boston when the Patriots, like Brady's first couple seasons, and that was the first and only parade like that I've ever been to. And that's just like a totally different experience.
I think I did it once. I'm not doing it again unless Hudson wanted to go.
Okay, so that's my next question.
Mm-hmm.
Did it once and you're done? Is it because of the crowds or what now?
It was, I would say this, that was the hardest getting out of Lambeau Field that I've ever experienced, even through games.
Really?
It was not.
Even the snowy cold games where you're sitting in traffic behind the, really?
It was, and I get it because, you know, they probably didn't have a whole lot of ideas to plan.
Right.
But it was awful getting out of there.
Did you see the early maps though? Because they drew those up for the draft now, obviously, because they're expecting a big. They said that they have the Lambeau Field, Titletown District will be the focus, but they're shutting down some back of the house areas that are going to be limited too. And both Green Bay and Ashwaubenon are planning to close several streets during that weekend.
Yeah, I believe
so. That might be a little hard to get around too.
I saw too a couple weeks ago because they keep buying land, and I don't think this will affect the draft. But remember, we used to go on bus trips, the distillery.
Yeah,
Packers bought that.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
where we used to have beers before the game.
Yeah.
So then what?
Probably going to tear it down.
And put up something else? Or?
Yeah. Packers are apparently own it now.
So what if
Keep buying up land.
So what is to that end? They're just going to put something up that they own and then pull revenue from? Like the same deal, probably tailgate style bar or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it'll be part or what, but yeah, they bought that for a few $1 million.
Mm-hmm. So they're kind of just running rank over there.
Apparently, I was reading some stuff too. They've been trying to get Kroll's right next to Lambeau.
Because wasn't it what Shopko that just left?
Kmart was over there.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Ooh,
it's going to be one giant Packers town at some point.
So that surprised me a little bit.
Well, yeah, me
But
too, because Green Bay is the tale of two cities, game
Mhm,
day versus not. It's a
mhm,
completely different area during
yeah.
that time.
But you see some of those bars like Stadium View and that,
Yeah.
just how like the last couple years, the renovations they've gone through.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah, seriously, I was there last year and I hadn't been for a few years. I took a few years off. You should go down with my dad to a game,
Mhm.
and it's unreal how fast that area is changing
Yeah.
down there.
I mean, upper decks,
Yeah.
TVs all over the
It
place.
makes me feel old to be like, back when I was young, going
I
to this
know.
bar wasn't this big at all. It's kinda like losing some of that mystique a little bit. It's too shiny and new in some ways.
I agree. All right, thanks, Morgs.
Anytime.
1 hour in, we got a couple more. We'll be back after these news updates. Second hour kicking off right now. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in and making part of your start with us here this morning on a Making the Turn Wednesday. Coming up in about 7:45 this morning. Give me your stock risers. We're gonna try to stay positive here. We're gonna do a little Making the Turn stock risers. So whose stock is rising? Usually we do Grind My Gears Tuesday, which is kind of like, well, we got to get some frustration and vent some stuff and all that. So let's make Wednesday a little bit more positivity and do a little whose stock is rising. Make your picks by hitting us up with a text at 715-830-1912. We'll get back to some more football talk really quick because I cut off Jeremy's the rest of his text here. But he says win total, I think they can get in with 10 wins. But if they get to 11, I would have no doubt in my mind they would be in. I think they get wins against the Saints, Dolphins, Seattle, and Minnesota. I think they also get one from the Bears. Then who knows? Sneak another one versus Bears, Lions, and 49ers. Who knows what could happen? Quick look at your fish and game forecast here this morning for all of you hunters and maybe still some fishermen out there. Your best times, your major times. Well, one's already expired, 2:46 to 4:46. Hopefully nobody's out deer hunting there and breaking the law during that time. Your next one, 3:14 to 5:14. So some good prime time out there this afternoon. Minor times, 11:41 a.m. to 12:41 p.m. And then again, 7:49 p.m. to 8:49 p.m. So that should be Luke. Make sure you get in your tree stand this afternoon. So,
right.
Yes. Take your bow and
I have because now I've moved to a new place in Eau Claire. Well, it's technically not Eau Claire, but it's essentially Eau Claire. So I was looking out
the suburbs.
Isn't Eau Claire basically a suburb?
Yeah, I have no idea.
No, that's not that used to be a knock. That was the thing I always said when I was younger, like 25-ish years ago. Like Eau Claire is the biggest suburb in the middle of nowhere. That is kind of a knock, but at the same time, it's kind of a compliment if you think about it. It's gotten better, I think, and it's still suburban. So yeah, it's basically in the burbs. But I was like, okay, so I got like 3 big trees out back, and they were there before the house was built. They're tall trees. Like that would be a good like tree if that were an area where you could hunt. And no, you really shouldn't in that area. But if you could probably do a pretty.
You can do some city ones, yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
have you seen any deer? I hope have you seen deer, or are you just basing it on the trees?
Just based on the trees.
Okay.
So far, no deer in that area, but I haven't been there long enough to know. Thankfully, I guess in terms of figuring this out, this is a really good time to find out what the deer population is like in that area.
Well,
I'm guessing it's going to be pretty sparse, though.
Okay. Yeah.
But hey, if you ever need a tall tree to head up,
to maybe just put up a stand and just chill.
Mm-hmm.
Might not see anything, but just chill up there.
You could.
Hey, you know what? Maybe build one for your daughter. Build a tree house for your daughter.
Oh my gosh, she probably would like that. She loves climbing stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and that sounds like a babe. No, like literally, like there was yesterday. She found part of her like baby/toddler bed, the part that we took off because she doesn't need it as a crib anymore, obviously because she's 3.5. And we had it set on the side, so it's kind of like a ladder, but it's definitely not. And she found it in a storage area. She starts climbing it like a ladder because she'll do like ladder stuff. I'm like, whoa. You're going to break that real fast. But she's in that mode right now. She will climb anything. So you might have given me a good idea.
There you go.
Some point down the road here.
Make sure you record it because you have to build it.
Yeah,
make sure you record yourself doing that.
See, now then the issue comes, I'm afraid of heights. She doesn't seem afraid of heights. I am. So we got to get over that part first. Yeah.
Let's chat a little college football because we've got the first projected brackets out there. The first college football playoff rankings were released, which in turn with the brackets. So the teams, your top 4 teams, seeded wise, would be number 1 Oregon, number 2 Georgia, number 3 Miami, and 4 BYU. BYU because, well, conference, right? So they would be the 4 seed, but Ohio State would be the 5 because Ohio State's actually college football playoff ranking number 2. So they'd be the 5 seed going up against Boise State. You have Indiana taking on Tennessee. Indiana 9, Tennessee 8. Texas, Alabama. Texas is 6, Alabama the 11th. Notre Dame at 10, They'd be taking on number 7 Penn State. First team out is SMU. Second team out is Texas A&M.
That's kind of wild still with SMU being in ranking territory. Those of us that are old enough to remember, and you remember the 30 for 30. That was like one of the first ones.
Yep.
I know they've been better-ish for a while now. It's not like the death penalty thing is still a thing, but just hearing SMU and college football playoff rankings, yes, I know it's expanded this year. Still is a little bit of a mind blow. Okay, so
what's a bigger mind blow, that or Indiana?
Indiana.
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, because at least we've, I don't know. It's just,
you know what's blowing my mind is seeing BYU as a 4 seed.
Okay, no, that's the correct answer for this because of the circumstance of that. Because you're thinking you're probably not going to have a like the 4th highest conference winner in the country being like, say, and I'm overstating this, being like the 16th or 18th best team in the country overall. It'll probably take care of itself, but that is a bit of an odd notion to think BYU is right there. Okay, so let's play this out. BYU is a first round bye. BYU wins their first game and they go on a bit of a run. Are we suddenly talking about crisis for the college football playoff because BYU went on a run, whereas like, say, Alabama or Tennessee or Penn State don't because they didn't, or Texas because they didn't win their conference?
Right.
And we could be facing that. And I know that Big Ten SEC talk of, well, let's doctor this so we're basically taking all the spots. Okay, fine. But that's the thing we may end up dealing with. But it's early. We know how these go. It'll work itself out in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. So it's definitely it's interesting. I mean, I don't know if it won't be this exact way when it's all said and done. I think we know that, right? There's going to be some shuffling. There'll be some shuffling around.
Yes.
Especially if Indiana can beat Ohio State and remain undefeated, which would be awesome. That would be fantastic. What a strange world what if Oregon, come on, Wisconsin, beat Oregon next week. Indiana just finish off undefeated and get in that top 4. Do it for America. Have Indiana represent the Big Ten. Not Oregon, not Ohio State. We would all get on that bandwagon, right?
Yeah. I mean, even as
unless you're an Ohio State fan or Oregon, you'd be on that.
Well,
right.
Okay. And even I know like you got the thing about NFC North teams and you can't root for them in the playoffs because they're rivals. But in terms of the Big Ten, this isn't to the level of, but I'm a Badgers fan, so I can't root for Indiana. Well, what? Like you said, Ohio State or Oregon, would you rather? No, I mean, given the choice, I think we'd all take Indiana, unless you are a fan of one of those two teams, or you're a fan of like Purdue and you're like arch rival. Other than that, I'd like to see that.
Yeah. I mean, I know my team's not going to be in it, so let's go Indiana. Let's go Hoosiers.
Plus, I think there's been a concern. It's been a concern of mine, and I'm sure it's a concern of a lot of it's not the big concern, but a concern of college football fans and such that are we moving towards a point where it's going to essentially be like the super conference we've talked about? So it would be the same 32 big brand teams always going to be there. And so a team like, say, Indiana, which historically has been mediocre at best, or a team like BYU that actually does have a national championship within the last half century, would never be able to compete. That it's always going to be Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama and Texas and Oregon, the usual suspects. This is refreshing to see. I hope it doesn't change and go back to just brands. I know people pay more attention to big brand names in sports, period. We saw that with the World Series, Yankees, Dodgers. Ratings are up in part because Yankees, Dodgers. But a little bit here and there is good. And Indiana going on a run, fine. Amongst the big boys, good. If we can keep having something like that, that's the right balance, and I hope that continues.
I agree. I totally agree. So, anything else stand out to you about the bracket?
Miami's being number 4. I for some reason I'm still
barely escaping Duke.
Yeah, I'm never I'm not completely sold on Miami for a while. I think because they've always been hyped as being ready to come back. They're kind of like Notre Dame.
Mhm.
Like
Well,
every year.
Texas was like that too, like, but now they're kind of maybe back now. So
Maybe they've
you know,
they've
finally did
crossed
it.
over to the point where okay, yeah, now they're legit good. Um, I that may be the one thing. Like I trust the top three to stay within the top five.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
hmm
Other than that, it
Notre
gets a
Dame's
little
going to
hairy.
lose their first round. I mean, that's a given.
That's
That's a
true.
lock.
Yeah.
You can throw that in there, and BYU will probably lose their first game too.
Probably. And I don't have a read on Alabama. Like historically, I want to say, well, they'll find their way back up because they always do. Yeah, well, they also don't have Nick Saban as their head coach anymore. I have to let the season play out before I
Mhm.
can make a new assessment on them. So they could be a one and done this time around.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
But
it doesn't help. I mean, Texas would be their matchup right now if it started. So, I mean,
And-
I'd pick Texas.
I would too. Not comfortably, but I would. So that's probably it. A good amount of the top 10 is probably going to stay in the top 10 when this is done. I mean, remember, we only have a month to go,
hmm
and then we're gonna have the rankings.
Right.
So they don't have too much time. There's not a lot of time for movement, which helps the teams that are there right now.
Right. All right. Let's take a quick break. We're going to talk some hoops. We'll get back to some more football talk here as well. So keep your comments, thoughts coming over there. What else is on your mind, peeps? Hit us up with the text on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line. Quick break, and we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Bucks won't be back in action till tomorrow night when they take on the Utah Jazz to try to stop their 6-game losing streak. And the next games after that, it's not going to get any easier because they got the Knicks in Boston again after that. But I've been seeing, I had a texter Jake a little bit earlier say that if this continues for the Bucks, Doc Rivers will be let go. What would have to happen though? I mean, it's pretty bad right now. But what would have to happen for the Bucks to let go of Doc Rivers and letting go of another coach like halfway through the season at this point?
They got to spend money on him too.
Right. I mean, they're still paying Adrian Griffin. I'm assuming, I don't know I don't think they're paying Budenholzer. They could be because I know there's like that offset language. Hey, if you get another job, then we stop paying you sort of thing. I don't know if that's a thing with the NBA. I know that is like the NFL. I would maybe kind of assume that. Who knows though? But I mean, I feel like the leeways or the leash is a little bit longer with Doc Rivers than maybe it was with Adrian Griffin.
I think it is. Because Griffin we didn't know what he was going to be like as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
We know what Doc Rivers is as a coach. And there's a lot of season to go. So you'd be saying, yeah, well, we haven't seen you even for a full season at this point. You're out. There'd have to be something behind the scenes that's really going wrong. Like chemistry issues, or I don't know what. I'm not going like scandal or anything like that, but I mean, it's something where you go, wow, this is not tenable. He's got to go. There's like, what's your best diagnosis on this start? And some of it is the opponents. They've had some really good ones, more to come too. But what is it thus far? Or are they having, as I always like to say, sometimes when you start a team starts a season really hot or really cold, well, they had their streak to start the season. So that skews your perception of how that team actually is going to perform. Is this the 7-8 game rough stretch of the Bucks 2024, 2025 season that just so happened to coincide with the first 7, 8, 9 games of the season?
Their bench play has stunk for the majority part of the season. They've been barely getting any contributions outside of, AJ Green having a good night the other night coming off the bench and 21 points, but Bobby Portis hasn't been doing a whole lot. I know he had over 20 points the other night too, but he was a starter. So it technically doesn't count as bench points there, but that has been struggling. And they just look old. They look old. It's just, I mean, I think it's a lot of small stuff that's evolving into one. If I'm not trying to cop out of answering that, but I think it's just a lot of small stuff that's evolving into one big whole thing. And it's just, it's frustrating to watch. Like I'm not like upset. I'm not mad. It's more like frustrating. Like, why is it this bad? It almost, I saw this, who said it yesterday, but I might've been actually Stephen A. They're kind of like the Lakers a little bit. They got a big man, Giannis, Anthony Davis, but then they've got an aging offensive player who doesn't like to play defense, LeBron and Damian Lillard. I'm like, okay, because it's mind-boggling to me when you look at the Lakers the last couple of years. It's like, okay, you got LeBron, Anthony Davis. How are you not at least a top 5 team in the West or a top 6 team in the West? And you're missing the playoffs or you're being in the play-in games. Then he's like, okay, is that an accurate comparison?
Kind of. Now the Lakers seem to be, again, still fairly early. We can still say that for another 3 weeks or so, and then we'll have to make more firm assessments. But it's kind of, they seem to kind of be figuring themselves out a little bit. You can adjust. I don't know how they can adjust this particular team with Giannis still around. Okay, I'll go there. Should the Bucks trade Giannis now?
No.
Why not?
No. It's still, right now.
Yeah, and not literally like by 9 a.m. this morning during our show now. But right. Is there a case to be made that if you're clearly not going to get any better, this is I'll state the case for this because this popped in my head the other day as I was driving around. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not a Bucks diehard, but I like the teams. I'd like them to still be relevant, and that's part of what's driving this. That if you realize you can't rejigger your roster enough in the next 2 or 3 years between older players, expensive players, poorly developing draft picks and such, that you go, all right, we're not going to win as constituted, and Giannis is going to want to ask out at some point soon. So before everyone gets eager and the price drops, sell now, because it's going to happen at some point, and start your regeneration with so many draft picks, and also probably after the season or maybe during the season, get rid of Horst, try someone who can draft better,
Yeah.
and
not be so willing to trade them all off.
right? But that might be how you maintain your relevance beyond what otherwise could be, hey, Fiserv Forum is still a pretty cool place, right? That's not enough.
Well,
you're going to have to do more. So that's the case for it. I know that's a radical thing, but that's the case.
Could a good example be, look at Golden State right now. They've only got one loss this season. And last year they're too old, right? That was the narrative around them. Draymond Green, get him out of there. Klay Thompson kind of looked like he maybe lost a little step. We know Steph Curry's been around the league here a little bit. Klay Thompson leaves. Warriors, they get a little bit younger. Yes, Andrew Wiggins is still there, but he's still in his 20s. Moses Moody's over there. He's only 22. Trace Jackson Davis, he's 24. They've influxed some younger talent with those veterans of a Steph Curry and a Draymond Green. And so far this season, they've started off 6-1. Is that the example to try to follow?
If you can get the right talent,
right? Because I look at his Bucks. You've got Giannis and Dame are still the two. I still question the Brook Lopez and bringing him back. I don't feel like that fits the style of NBA. He's a rim protector. He's a great defender and all that. I just feel like teams can expose. And, they can expose his defensive flaws by just playing on the outside.
Because what would you get for him if you tried to trade him as opposed to letting him go?
I don't know if you would get a whole lot.
That's where they're kind of stuck now. Because at that point you go, well, might as well punt on the season or try to get back a second round pick in 2033. This is a bit of a problem spot now. I think it's like what you said. A lot of stuff is turning out not good, but that's the final result of we shouldn't say final result, but what we're seeing right now is older players, an injury here, all of that is kind of not working. In the Warriors case, of course, the other thing to remember is they had a mega whiff on Jonathan Wiseman. Not that Wiseman's going to have a bad career entirely, but that should have been a really, really good pick. You picked number 2, and as a really good team, and you missed that. That was kind of a waste.
I look at some of the top teams in the league, and to be fair too, you look at the Eastern Conference. Outside of Cleveland and Boston, everybody's been average so far. So technically the Bucks aren't that far out if you really look at it.
Yeah.
Because Brooklyn's your 3rd seed and they're 4-4. So they're not that far out. Cleveland is just undefeated, and then you got Boston. We know about Boston, and that's so top heavy between those two right now. But you look at some of the top teams and how their lineups are made up, like Cleveland. Jared Allen's their big man. He's 6'9". Okay, he's a younger guy. He's 6'9". He can stretch it out. Even Al Horford, yes, he's old. He's 38, but he plays outside, and he's only 6'9". Chet Holmgren, for crying out loud, right? We know about his style of play.
Yeah.
You look at some of these, like for Boston too, Jason Tatum is listed as the 4, as the power forward, for crying out loud. We know he's not a typical power forward. When I think of power forward, I still think of the Karl Malones and Charles Barkleys and those guys. So I just think this lineup for the Bucks isn't conducive to what the style of the NBA is right now.
I remember about a decade ago, so I'd be cautious to draw a thread to the current Bucks, but wasn't there a point, because I talked about it on like one of the prior versions of the show, where it was like they're going to go all in on like athletic wings or something, or it was something where like they're going to counter where the NBA was at that moment. It kind of seems like they really are doing that now, which there's a case to be made that you do the opposite of that because other teams wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with that. approach. So, and that has been a problem for other teams in terms of defense. But now the defense isn't that good. So now you just got big inside guys who can't perform that well. And now you're kind of in like dead 90s territory.
Well, right, and I know that before the season started, they said they wanted to use their size as an advantage. Well, if your size, I mean, okay, I get that, I understand that, but if your size is slow and they can't defend on the outside, then that quickly turns into a disadvantage.
Yes, that's the problem.
So my question then would be, is Giannis playing out of position?
Probably so. Because if you cannot rely as much on Brook Lopez, that's the crux of a lot of this here. Well, then you're going to have to change around the positions on the team, and I think you almost have to. It's kind of a version of making him the one-man show, which I'm saying this knowing Damian Lillard's still on this team. But I think you got to find any way that he can score and play really good defense. That's putting a lot on him. Maybe I don't know that he would like that, but to save an NBA Finals shot for the season, not to save the season, but to save an NBA Finals shot, that might be your best bet for this year, and then try to reset for next year with something totally different.
Because I don't think you can play the style that Spurs won with Tim Duncan and David Robinson in the Twin Towers anymore.
No. They don't have the ability left for that.
Right.
And it's also not exactly the same as those two, but you couldn't really do it anyway. Lopez is declining. Other players aren't as good. So your bench guys aren't as good. So it becomes kind of a one-man show sort of thing. And so you got to hope that he can do like a Jokic or one of those takeover years. Well, he's got to get to that. I mean, he's doing a lot already. He's got to do even more. And I'm not sure if that's going to be enough.
And that's the thing is like, okay, you mentioned Jokic too. And yes, he's a big man. He's a center, but he can defend on the outside. You know, he can defend. And it's just that, yeah. I just think the makeup is wrong for the style of the NBA for this Bucks team.
I don't think it matches. I don't know exactly how they ended up in this spot unless they figured I think I talked about this a week ago or two, that they can't see if this theory still holds. There's too much alteration they would have to make to the way the team is built. They can't rebuild it on the fly. And even on the fly, being an off season, not week 4 of the regular season. So they kind of have to squeeze out as much as they can with this. And after that, probably have to reset, but you don't want to reset too much because then Giannis wants out. Which kind of leads me back to what I was saying in the first place of, well, if the prior thing is what they want to do, and Giannis will want out, you might as well sell Giannis early. Don't even let Giannis Antetokounmpo become the quote unquote villain. And again, I know fans say is not as important as what the front office thinks, but you might as well get ahead of that. All the win stuff, because they're going to report that at some point, and it probably is going to happen. Giannis probably is going to start talking if this does not get demonstrably better. Might as well go early.
And that's the thing, though, to me, is that still a lot of this stuff was made for Giannis. Decisions were made for Giannis. So he needs to look himself in the mirror, in my opinion, too. I mean, these were the guys he wanted. These were the guys he wanted. It's Rodgers-esque.
Yes. I was going to say, yes, somehow we found a way to once again get Aaron Rodgers back in it, but it's true.
It is.
That's why it's not really a good thing to have a player be your GM.
How about this? So again, this was from yesterday on the mothership, and the question was, should Giannis want out of Milwaukee? This is actually what Stephen A. said. Audio courtesy from ESPN. All right, what do you think?
I think they're probably right on
I
this.
think I agree 100% with you. And what they said exactly what we were saying, right? This is what Giannis wanted.
Side note, we'll put this up. I know a lot of that was this Kendrick Perkins, but a lot of what Stephen A. Smith actually really does have to say is not that wildly hot take-ish.
No.
It's presented.
I was going to
as
say it's how he presents it, right?
right.
The,
and
the
it's always
yelling
the,
and
ooh face. You
Yeah.
know what it's tough to
Yep.
disagree. But then you actually hear his comments. You're like, that makes a lot of normal sense, actually. That's right, and Perk agreed with that, and I think I do too. Because
Giannis wanted Middleton. Middleton's there. Giannis wanted Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez is still there. And he's exactly right. And I know the Olympics meant a big deal for Giannis in the offseason. But Giannis admitted him and Dame didn't work out together this offseason. So where's the priorities in at that point?
Yes, the priority is not 100% on the team, and I mean, teach their own in their priority. I mean, Giannis might argue, look, I did what I felt was right. Okay, fair enough. The consequence of that might end up being your pro basketball club is going to not perform as well, at least to start, if not for the entirety of the season.
And I completely agree with them where they said too, this is what you want. You don't duck and run.
Yes.
You don't duck and run. This is what you want. This is exactly what you wanted. You can't duck and run at this point. And I completely agree with that. 100%.
It sounds that a little Rodgers-esque as well, but maybe if what ends up happening is the hints really turn into, oh gosh, Giannis really wants out, and we're hearing that in January.
The thing is too, I mean, Giannis is beloved. I love Giannis. A lot of people love Giannis in that too. But here's the thing. If all of a sudden we start getting comments again from Giannis saying we got to do this, or those passive aggressive comments,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get really annoyed, and then I'm gonna be like, dude, shut up. Okay, just there's a point. I understand it, the first couple times, but they have done everything that you have wanted. You don't talk anymore. If you're not winning, don't talk anymore. Not until you start winning ball games again.
Mm-hmm.
Because then that's going to wear thin on me. I don't know if it'll wear thin on a lot of Bucks fans, but it'll wear thin on me because they are doing. A lot of Bucks fans wanted to move on from Middleton. How many years before they won the finals, right?
Yeah.
That was the question. He's not a real number two. Got to move on from him. He's still here because of Giannis. That's his best man at his wedding. That's one of his best friends. So I don't want to hear Giannis talk about those passive-aggressive comments again. No, not anymore, because that's going to wear thin. Don't want to hear it. Put up or shut up, right?
Yep. That's what it is. See, that goes back to, I'm not going to harp on this too much, but this comes back to if it's a matter of Bucks management knowing that Giannis is eventually going to want to ask out or not, go earlier than later. Don't get into a position where he's demanding, and then you go ahead and do that. Then it's a fairly weak spot. I mean, I guess in a symbolic sense, of course it's weak, but it also would be weak in an asset spot.
Mhm.
You're not going to get as much. It would be better to do something earlier where you could maybe get a whole lot to work with.
Would he get the type of flack that, and it's a little bit different because he already has a championship, but would he get the type of flack if all of a sudden he, quote unquote, forces his way out that KD got for going to Golden State?
I think it depends on where he goes.
Mm-hmm.
If he went to Boston, let's say.
Oh, yeah.
That's the primo example because they're the closest thing to a really, really good team right now.
Yep.
New York would be, it's kind of a no-win situation there because previously it would be, well, you just want to go to the Knicks because it's New York.
Right.
Now they're also getting really good too. Lakers also is a loss in that regard because it's the Lakers. After that, though, I don't know that. I mean, maybe the Sixers. He's not going to want to go there.
Yeah, what would be that team? Because the Warriors were already winning.
That's the
That's
thing.
Yeah, you're right. Boston would be that one, but let's be a little realistic in it. That's probably not going to happen.
Boston could not afford that.
Right.
New York is they made their move. They can't afford that. Maybe the Lakers could. I guess I'm not as
Would it be Miami the next closest one just
Oh,
because it's
gosh.
Miami?
Yeah, I suppose that would be there's that. If
Even
you
though they
ask-
haven't really won anything in a while.
right,
They've gotten 1 seeds, and then when they're not a 1 seed, they're an 8, but then they go to the finals.
they're
as a one.
always there. They've made a bunch of, relatively speaking, a good number of conference finals of late. I mean, not to the level of the Celtics that are there all the time, but Heat almost they're next tier down. Of Bucks fans' least liked teams, where do the Heat rank?
Mm-hmm.
What biggest rival? Are they top 3?
Yeah, maybe. I think so.
Because I've struggled for a while with who is the Bucks' arch rival, and sometimes
I feel like it changes every year. Like a couple years ago, it was like we wanted it to be the 76ers because there was like bad blood, right? There was a little bit of bad blood. That's when James Harden was that when James Harden was there?
Yeah,
Because it was like the
that
ball
was it.
thrown and sort
Yep.
of like, oh right, we got a rival.
Yep.
Then it was like the Heat, and then like last year, it's like, oh, it's the Pacers now. It like
And
changes
a
every
little
6
bit of
months.
the Celtics at
Yeah.
times. I would say the Heat. Like if you said, like if we reported right now, Giannis Antetokounmpo wants to be traded to the Miami Heat, that would get a more sour reaction than I think any team other than probably the only teams that get a worse reaction might be from Bucks fans.
Mhm.
Lakers, because again, it'd be LeBron, super team, and maybe the Knicks. I'm not even sure if Bucks fans would be all that mad about like a demand of the Celtics. Take out the financials that make that, is like you said, essentially impossible. It'd be more like, oh man, you just want to go to the okay. I mean, then it's kind of like a KD thing, but not as bad. Because the Warriors were winning so much, that's what made that so annoying.
Right. And he was a free agent, so he like chose to sign there sort of thing too.
Right.
So
Yeah.
but
Whereas you'd be pulling something back from that other team.
exactly right. Yeah, because the Warriors didn't have to give up anything.
Yeah.
So it's that was like the definition of like tag along. I'll jump on
Cool.
that Superman cape there. So
Yeah, now I'm gonna be a winner.
mhm.
Yeah, I don't know what's gonna ultimately happen with this. What's the over under weeks we should set for when we first start to hear about like legit he wants out? And that could be like 52 weeks, dude. It doesn't have to be like next week. How many weeks do you think we go?
That he legit wants out
Until we start to hear
hear-
the thing comes out of like sources in Milwaukee are saying
Mhm.
Giannis Antetokounmpo has sat down and said without X number of changes, he is going to demand a trade.
Give me till after Christmas.
Yeah. I would say, I'm actually going to say like late January, sometime early February.
Yeah.
And that's the over under. I might even
And that's
take
right
the,
around the trade deadline too. So
Right.
yeah.
And I might actually take the over on that. I'm not 100% sure that still is going to happen. Maybe I'm a little optimistic.
Right.
But I think that's where, if it's going to happen, it's going to be around then.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got to take a quick break here. We'll finish up the second hour. Keep your thoughts coming. No, hit us up with a text, 715-830-1912. Quick break. We'll be back in just a couple minutes. Coming up just past top of the hour, we'll do a little stock risers, just a stock riser. So give me one person, thing, team, whatever, whose stock is rising. Lucas, we'll do that just past 8 o'clock because we only got about 5 minutes to the top of the hour here. So we'll get back to some more football talk as well coming up in the next hour. Badgers back in action tomorrow for Hoops 2. They'll be taking on Montana State over there. I know you're amped up for that one, Montana State.
Woohoo!
But college basketball, I feel like it's kind of flew under the radar. Is it because they don't have the 24-hour thing anymore?
Yeah, like I just sort of started in like, oh, hey, Gophers are playing. That's cool.
Right, exactly. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, Doug Gottlieb's sweating through his shirt in his first game. And it's like, holy crap.
Yeah, I did not catch any Midnight Madnesses at all. Now that you mention it, were there any? Did I miss this?
There wasn't. There was no Midnight Madness. I thought I heard somebody say they didn't do it. That ESPN didn't do it this year.
Looking in the news, like, what were there teams that? I mean, yeah, there are some Midnight Madnesses around the country, but not much.
Yeah.
Huh. I don't know why. Why did they go away?
Yeah.
Not that it was necessarily the best thing ever, but you have like the 24 hours of college basketball thing, which I always thought was kind of cool, even if I didn't really watch all of it.
Right.
But still, yeah, it is sort of coming in gradually, slowly.
Because it's kind of like when high school football started. I know like Regis and some other teams, they'll start off right at midnight when they can.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a tradition like that. I kind of like it. I don't know if the players like it getting up and staying, but they're young. I mean, we were always night owls when we were young anyway. So, but I always like that.
Maybe the players did say, no, actually, we don't want to do this.
Right.
I don't know. Never enough.
But because Blue Golds, their basketball season starts this weekend too at Sonatag.
At Sonatag. And so that, by the way, I was there.
I saw that.
Yeah. First actual, like I did the open house thing, but this was the first game because, of course, hey, my alma mater, Luther, was there. So naturally that made sense to attend. Have you been to Sonatag for a game?
Not a game yet, but a couple times. So.
Yeah, go. It's the good thing I got impression wise was for anyone who's wondering, not that anyone asked, but I mean, I got a good vibe in terms of a game experience. You could smell the concessions. Fans got loud at the right time. Also, I think this is the first volleyball match of any sort I've ever attended. Like, I've watched it on TV, and then of course, like the beach volleyball in high school. So, but I don't think I've ever gone to a volleyball match before. Dang, that's entertaining.
Yeah.
Even if it was a three sets over the games. Yeah, 3-set sweep. Still, it was fun. Part of me was thinking, why isn't this not a bigger deal? Like, this was fascinating to watch. And for what I guess you would, I mean, I don't really want to say a down year for Blue Gold volleyball.
Oh, no, they're not. They're in the top 25.
Right, I know. When you win a national championship, top 25 suddenly is like, oh, wait a minute. No. I was talking to one of my friends who follows volleyball. Is like, yeah, I mean, you talked about it as well. It's a younger team. Give it some time. But even then, the coaching, the scheming, the power and athleticism of that Blue Gold team came out. And I know Luther doesn't have a good volleyball team this season. They're second to last in their conference. But it came through in the stands as well. But back to Sonatag, anyone going, you're going to enjoy it. Definitely go to a basketball game in the coming months.
Absolutely. So yeah, they got their tip-off tournament starting on Friday. Both men and women's teams over there. So, okay, but college basketball full season underway, and I know the Blue Golds hockey. They fell last night. Women's team fell last night, but they opened up against St. Louis, 15th ranked St. Louis, 3-2. Let me just double check that. Yeah, the Cardinals women's hockey. 3-2, St. Mary's of Minnesota. So, but their season now is officially underway too. So, winter sports season, man, coming up.
At least it's starting to feel a little more wintry and not like
summer
is not entirely done.
Right. Exactly.
I know it's warm, but come on, transition. Having like colder, mistier days of late has actually been good, in my opinion. Like, it feels like autumn.
Yeah, I'm ready for Christmas. I'll be honest.
Okay, when are you going to start putting up your decorations?
We're not allowed till after Thanksgiving.
Okay, I was talking to one of our bosses here, Phil, for those who know and those who don't. He said in about a week and a half he's going all in. I'm like, ooh, okay, okay.
I've already seen houses around us that have the Grinch stuff outside. So
yeah, it's starting.
Mhm.
Little too early for me yet, but it's gonna come. Give it
Mhm.
time.
yeah,
I'm kind of in the same boat though. Of Black Friday, make the transition over, then I'll be all in.
it's usually let's get through deer hunting season first, and then we can focus on that. So
Like I'm one thing at a time.
yep, exactly. All right, 2 in. We got 1 more to go. We got some news updates, and then we'll do some stock risers coming up after these news updates. Final hour kicking off right now on this Wednesday morning. Good morning, everybody. Making the turn on this week. Now directed towards the upcoming weekend here. We're going to kick off this hour with a little stock risers. Lucas, are you ready?
I just about was. I had my personnel set, then I looked at the stats and went, "Oh, after last night, no." It was
Okay.
the wild goalie Philip Gustafson's been off to a
Okay.
great start. 4 goals against last night.
Oh yeah, that's not.
I'm
that's
going to
not the
presume that was
greatest.
one game, so I shouldn't. Maybe I could still validly do that, but I am in the process of a quick reevaluation on the fly. So do your stock rise, and I'll have one as soon as you're done.
All right. Mine's pretty simple. Jared Goff.
Mm.
I think, a little bit more talk about NFL MVP. We're about the halfway mark, right? And so you got people doing midseason awards and all that sort of stuff and handing them out. And of course, you got Josh Allen, who's getting a lot of love for MVP. Heck, even Patrick Mahomes was, when Patrick Mahomes had more interceptions than touchdowns, he was still getting more MVP talk than Jared Goff. Lamar Jackson is getting here. This is from Vegas Insider. Right now, the best odds to win MVP: Lamar, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, then Jared Goff is at number 4. That should be higher, in my opinion. You can sit there and say, well, look at, he's not throwing for 300 yards, but they're winning freaking ball games right now, aren't they?
He's not turning over the ball.
No. And so I think he deserves it. So, hell, I think Jane Daniels deserves it more than Patrick Mahomes at this point. I know the Chiefs are undefeated, but for crying out loud, to me, Jared Goff and Jane Daniels should get more attention than Josh Allen at this point. I think it's going to trend that direction a little bit more. So I'm going to go arrow pointing Jared Goff.
Okay. I guess I'm going to go with Anthony Edwards' scoring number going up in general. That his 3-point prowess. What was it? Was it Harden and Curry? I'm trying to remember the exact stat because I was reading it yesterday, and I'll find it in the power rankings. But he is off to a stupidly high 3-point wave here thus far. And I know you were getting a lot of that anyway. Like this is sort of the solving of basketball to the nth degree now. Everyone's shooting threes. Like literally everyone is shooting threes. So this is some point that we kind of change the nature of the game. I do wonder, side note, before I continue with Ant, is there a point where the NBA actually has to go, all right, kind of like baseball and the pitch clock of, okay, we've solved for this too much. We have to do something beyond changing like the defensive rules. And I know that wasn't 3-point stuff. That was more about flopping mid-season last year. But do they have to do something and go, yeah, I know lots of offense, but it's becoming a joke? And do they do like multiple lines, like a 4-point line, or is that, I don't know. I'm throwing stuff out there. But 12.3 3-pointers per game. He has led the NBA most. He's leading the NBA most threes in his career, averaged. It's been Harden or Curry so far since 2012, 2013. Understandably so.
Right, yeah.
But right now he's 43.2% from 3. I don't know that he's going to keep doing this, but given the caliber of what we've seen in what is still a fairly young career, we're about done calling it a young career, but given his talent, I wonder, is this a conscious effort to become that much of an outside weapon that changes the dynamic of how you defend the Timberwolves, understanding that they're probably in a 2.5 month, and maybe not 2.5 month, the 2-month working out process post Randall Towns trade and figuring out whose roles are whose. And maybe it's Edwards going, look, I'm going to shoot threes. I will for now, just to get the ball in, to keep us winning games until we get our scheme set up. But I'm going to call him a stock riser in that he may, the best case scenario here, I guess, for him and for the Wolves is that he's not unlocked, but he's now developing another potentially like how do we defend this part of his game? Which, oh my gosh, if he becomes a crazy 3-point shooter on top of everything else we've seen, whoa, that would be great. I also don't know that it's best for the team overall long term, but it's a stock riser right now, at least for him.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's your making a turn stock risers for this Wednesday morning. Looking at back to the NFL here, since we're kind of at that midway point. We're calling it because, well, Packers have a bye, and it just works out that way. So, and you got everybody this week doing their midseason awards and all that stuff. But looking at the standings here and seeing where everybody's kind of at, obviously Kansas City still undefeated. They're at the top of the AFC. You've got Detroit at the top of the NFC, 7-1. If you had to pick between a Super Bowl matchup right now, from what we have seen between Kansas City and Detroit or the field, what are you taking?
Ooh, that's a good one. Right now, I will take Kansas City and Detroit. The field is almost always the safe and right answer. I could see this playing out this way.
Now, let me ask you another follow-up.
Yes. This will give me time to look at my DVOA stats because I got numbers. But yes, go for the follow-up.
The team you're most at this point, and we're just basing it off of what we've seen halfway through a season. We know a lot can change. But right now, for argument's sake, the team that you would trust or have more confidence in making the Super Bowl, Kansas City or Detroit?
Kansas City.
Really?
They find ways to win. I mean, I picked them against Tampa Bay thinking, under most circumstances, given the record, the nature of how the teams have performed, not in terms of like little things, but in general, like, okay, this is totally shaping up to be a Tampa Bay win. But I'm like, no. Kansas City will figure out this game. They'll lose at some point, probably real soon, but they'll win, and they did. They play different than other teams. A lot of that is because of Mahomes, but that drives a lot of how the team plays. They're different than the other 31 teams.
Looking at the remaining schedule for them, Broncos this weekend. That's a Chiefs win. It's at Kansas City too.
Mm-hmm.
This one's going to be really good. It might be their first one. At Buffalo on the 17th.
Mm.
At Carolina, that's a win. Home against the Raiders, that's a win. Chargers will be interesting. It's home, but it's the Chargers. At Cleveland, that's a win. Home against the Texans, we'll see. At Pittsburgh, we'll see. At Denver, that's a win.
Denver's trending a little bit up. Mm-hmm. And of course, also at the end of the season, maybe it doesn't matter.
If they beat Buffalo in 2 weeks, then is that talk about undefeated going to kick into gear?
I think at that point.
Yeah.
There's still this thought of, Kansas City isn't that good. What's wrong with Patrick Mahomes? There's still a little bit of that dribbling around.
Well, I love the DeAndre Hopkins comparison now to when Brady got Moss.
Well, I mean, it's
in 07.
Yeah. Well, and there was in Aaron Schatz's article, and I was going to mention this about the Lions, and I'll get back to that in a sec, but we're talking about how good are the Chiefs being undefeated of going back to now. They go back to 1979 with DVOA. They've been able to get enough game plays to analyze. Of the 25 teams that started 8-0 going back, since then they're 18th of those 25 teams. But as he noted, across the board, it's not like, well, all the top ones won the Super Bowl and all the bottom ones ended up barely doing anything in the playoffs. It goes all around, and as he said, they got Hopkins, as he calls it, a bona fide number one receiver. Now, my immediate reaction was Jerry Rice. But I think we're talking like, who is necessarily like, could you bring in a number one guy at that moment?
Right.
So Kansas City, I think, still can pull this off. They're just a different team now.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the crazy offensive juggernaut of 4 or 5 years ago. They've adapted. The best teams adapted. They shape shift, and that's what they've done around Mahomes. I trust them more than the Lions in that because of that. And Detroit feels like a more dynamic team. Like when they're good, they're freaking good. But if they screw something up, they could be dead in the water. Usually doesn't happen, but it can. And I don't know that I trust that the whole way through. I could see them blowing themselves up in the divisional round, for example. But I could also see them blowing out the Chiefs and scoring 48 points in the Super Bowl.
Are you describing the Lions or the Cowboys right now?
Well, I suppose I'm kind of describing the Cowboys in a lot of ways. It's just without any of the upside. Mike McCarthy, another season after this?
No.
No. Okay. But of the Lions, here's where they're at. Remember, they now finally got to number 1 in DVOA, first time ever. And again, a lot of it's retroactive, so it's not like the 1991 Lions were trying to get to number 1 in DVOA. That didn't exist. But if you retroactively look at this, best DVOA through 8 games, going back to 79. The teams above them, the 07 Patriots, the undefeated, 91 Washington, speaking of that season, went on to win the Super Bowl. The 85 Bears, 07 Indianapolis. Did not make the conference championship, but that was still a really good team. Right behind Detroit, the 96 Packers. And there's some other, and then it kind of goes back and forth. You got some teams that it had varying performances. So it's not a lock, but they're in really good company right now.
So, really quick question for you, because I do have a follow-up in regards to DVOA. For anybody listening, a quick refresher. What is DVOA?
The specific definition of DVOA,
because I know that's one of your favorite things.
Yeah.
You look at DVOA.
Defense adjusted value over average. It according to, I'll do the Wikipedia read here, but that's the easiest one I can say. Calculates a team's success based on the down and distance of each play during the season, and then calculates how much more or less successful each team is compared to the average. So literally going play by play. How did you do? How efficient are you?
Similar to Pro Football Focus.
Yes.
In
It's
a
another
sense.
it's
Metric.
another metric. It's kind of like what's your preference? Do you go with B WAR or F WAR when it comes to baseball? We hear that sometimes and it's confusing. Well, that's the Fangraphs version of wins above replacement or the Baseball Reference version of wins above replacement. Choose your own. It'd be nice if there was some holistic thing where you could combine this and like the FIP from ESPN, Pro Football Focus, some of the other ones, and come up with an overall, the records, but here's how the teams are really doing. Because the records don't always say exactly how good a team is. The whole point we follow this is to go beyond the record, who's really, really good. The advantage with Detroit right now, looking across like the rankings of those teams, Indianapolis, I know that a thing with DVOA, special teams don't really matter that much. That being said, Tennessee's right now is historically putrid.
Well, I'm going to bring that up here in a second.
Okay, so we'll hold that thought. But of those teams above them, in terms of where their rank was, 07 Pats were 1, 2, 5 in terms of offense, defense, and special teams rank at this point, 8 games through the season. 91 Washington, 3-3-1. 85 Bears, 3-1-3. 07 Indianapolis, 3-3-23. 24 Detroit, 3-3-1. They're top 3 in all categories. That bodes well because the other 2 teams that were top 3 all categories were 91 Washington, 85 Chicago, Super Bowl champions. That's good. And just scanning through, the only other team in that top 12 or however many that was top 3 in all 3 categories, 90 New York Giants won the Super Bowl. Take of that as you will.
So, I want to bring up now where the Packers are at this thing. So, DVOA, you said Detroit number 1 overall, right?
Correct.
Baltimore's 2, Kansas City's 3, Minnesota's 4, Buffalo is 6, then San Francisco's 5. They got
San Fran's 5, okay. Buffalo is 6.
Washington 7, and then Green Bay's 8.
Yes.
So that's their total. Offense, they're also 8th. Defense 13th. Now I've
special
seen
teams 27th.
Yeah, well, I'll go just wait.
Okay, I'm going to pull a Marty Green here and break the news.
So offense, defense. I mean, not bad, right? Top 10 offense and 13th defense. And I've seen a lot of people talking about this DVOA rankings as improvements, but this also shows that Green Bay's got a lot of. They're a good team, but with a lot of room to improve. Do you buy that? That kind of narrative with the DVOA rankings, where they're at for Green Bay, really good team, but it's also proven that they've got a lot of room to improve.
It makes sense. Sometimes, and because it is a formula, And Aaron Schatz always admits this. He's never like, yeah, my things. He's like, you know what? Maybe I need to adjust this. He's very open about that. So sometimes it doesn't quite make sense. The model doesn't account for a way a team particularly plays. But you buy them at 862. So basically a top quarter of the league team, would you on offense, would you buy that right now? Like I'd say they're at the bottom quarter. Sure. That kind of makes sense. Are they about a top third, almost half defense? I might think they might be a little bit better, but maybe that's all the Xavier McKinney interception stuff that's skewing that. So that probably seems right. Like, I'll take my team because they're the one that I pay most attention to that team. 14th ranked offense. I might have thought they were a little bit higher than that, but
I would have probably thought that too. Yeah,
but it's not. Again, it's a matter of efficiency. Sometimes you can score a lot, and that's not necessarily efficient. Depends on how you play. Number one defense. Yeah, I know a week ago I was like, nope. But for the season overall and who they've played and how they performed against the Colts, they got back on track. Number one, I don't know if I'd say that, but top 5 for sure. So they're in the ballpark of that. So it's broadly speaking, it's like what we said with the presidential election and all the assorted polls, and something would come out and you'd be like, what is this? Throw it in the pile. These are all different ways of looking at what we're trying to analyze. Same thing with this, but it's good. Just factor that in too.
So special teams, Green Bay is ranked 27th. I mean, it's not good. My question is, when it comes to this Packers special teams unit, and I'm throwing this out to listeners, and I want your opinion too. So we know the issues of the special teams group for the last couple of years, specifically from kickers. Not necessarily punters, but kicking, right? I mean, they've had 2 years in a row now, the all-pro kick returner. Not really a whole lot from punt return, but Keyshawn over there too. Rich Bisaccia, I think, is still the highest paid special teams coordinator. I could be wrong, but he's up there. We know that, right? He's got assistant head coach title and all that too. But we've seen this rotation of kickers to where they had to bring in another veteran to kind of calm the waves here a little bit. And that's not going to be. Would we be surprised if Green Bay invests a pick in a kicker next year? I'm not going to be.
No,
I'm not going to be. So, at what point? Because you made a comment too about special teams where DVOA doesn't really factor a whole lot into that, or doesn't pay whatever it was that you kind of said there a couple minutes ago.
Special teams and like, it doesn't factor. It's not as important to an overall team's performance. I think because it happens so infrequently, there's a little bit more of a fluke potential to it. So that's where, like, for example, right now. Packers are 27th in special teams, and they're currently ranked 8th. Buffalo is 6th, they're 26th.
Right.
San Francisco is 5th, they're 30th. Minnesota's 4th overall, 20th in special teams. Baltimore 2nd overall, they're 19th in special teams. If you just looked at the special teams rankings, they're all over the place. The second best team in special teams, the Dallas Cowboys, 25th in DVOA.
So my question then is, because I'm sensing and I'm seeing it a little bit too amongst Packers fans on the socials, like, okay, we need to change that special teams coordinator. However, my question is, how important is it to get, how do I want to phrase this? Where's that balance? Because we have heard from Josh Jacobs and Keyshawn Nixon that big reasons why, like specifically Josh Jacobs, but big reasons why they came to Green Bay was because of Rich Bisaccia, that he was there. We've heard even Aaron Rodgers, when it was a couple years ago when the whole coaching carousel, he threw out an endorsement for Rich Bisaccia. Should that factor into whether you keep a coach or not at a special teams coordinator spot? That it's almost like a recruiting aspect to it. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Offense and defensive coordinator, I think, are a little bit different because you're more game planning and you're calling plays, right? But with the issues that we've seen at kicker for this unit, how much do you factor that into Rich Bisaccia's job performance compared to his ability, that obviously an immense amount of respect amongst players, to where, you know, it's almost a selling point for some players to come over there. Where's that middle? Where's that balance?
I think it's more on having a competent special teams. If you're going to have a coach on your staff that players love and you want him there for that reason, make him an assistant head coach.
And technically, that's his title too.
Yeah. So then maybe that's what he should be. If he's not, if ultimately it's judged, I'm not saying that he should be out as special teams coordinator, though.
And my question
not
is
looking
too, when it
great.
comes to kickers, is it where does the blame mostly lie on? Is it the scouting staff and Goody,
Yeah.
or the coach?
It's probably more that. I've always figured special teams coordinators, when they tend to get fired, and this is the only way that I'm able to judge it as just as a fan, as a follower of football, the coordinators tend to be fired during a season or after a season when the overall coverage unit's return game tends to fail. Bad kickers tend to be replaced by other kickers, and that's it.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of an example where you had a bad kicker and then the special teams coordinator got axed.
Right.
Usually doesn't happen that way. So if the ultimate problem with the Packers is kicking, I think Rich Bisaccia is going to be fine. Now, if there are special teams, if they start allowing more run backs and they're muffing punts and that sort of stuff, then it's on Bisaccia, and that does cost games. If you're losing a game by 2 points because a team was able to pick up a muff punt and was able to get a field goal, that's on Bisaccia, and you shouldn't be paying him that much money. If I'm saying that in a hypothetical, if that were to happen.
Mhm.
I don't know that it's best for them to be paying as much money to him, even if he's getting that much, if he's getting that much attention from other players. But that's where, again, I think maybe becomes just an assistant head coach. Now, maybe he wants to coach special teams. Well, then you might be in a pickle, and you got to do what's best for your team overall.
Mhm.
But they haven't really gotten that much better on special outside of Nixon, who's been wonderful. Outside of that,
Well, Daniel Whelan's been really good too.
that's true. But overall, they have not demonstrably improved.
The thing is too with me where I struggle with special teams is specifically with the kickoff. I mean, a team can take you out of that, right?
Mhm.
They don't want Nixon to return it, kick it in the back of the end zone. So that's not necessarily a knock on Bisaccia, right? Because you can't control that.
Right.
That's a situation you cannot control.
You're down to punters
Right.
and hoping that the punter will leave it in a position where Nixon could, if Nixon were there,
Mhm.
it has to be something like that.
So
You're narrowing it down to particular situations.
right, and that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, okay, so where does the responsibilities from a kicker is that corner? And it goes back to something I threw out a couple weeks ago. Do you bring in almost just a veteran kicker who's retired and have a kicking coach? Because my question is like, I know Bisaccia has been a special teams coordinator for a long time, but is kicking his specialty? Has he ever kicked? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I know there's coaches that, are like offense. Like, here's an example: Bobby Slowick, who's the offensive coordinator for the Texans. His dad was defensive coordinator for the Packers. He came up as a defensive coach assistant with Washington. Transition. He's pretty good offensive coordinator right now. So there is that possibility. But would it be beneficial? And I'm maybe a little surprised more teams aren't doing this, especially if we are going to get younger kickers. Do you bring in a guy who's kicked in the league? Like, for example, Mason Crosby, if he's ever interested, to be a kicking coach. I mean, for crying out loud, when Jay Feely was on TV and you got a kicking analyst, which to me was one of the dumbest things out there. But why wouldn't teams look at doing that? Especially to help mentor these young kickers.
Usually teams have figured out just about everything, so why have they not done that? The only thing I can think is that kickers, maybe they're of a particular mindset that they wouldn't respond as well to having a kicking coach. You wouldn't,
because it's like golfers. We compare kickers to golfers a lot, right?
Mhm.
Golfers have a swing coach.
Yeah, that's true.
They got the caddies that do all that, but they also got a swing coach.
Is the thought that, there's like quarterbacks coach, tight ends coach, but you have multiples on the team, whereas there's one field goal kicker,
right?
Extra point kicker, kickoff kicker. You don't want one coach to one kicker. Maybe it's the ratio that's holding
I don't
teams
know,
back?
but I feel like it would be so beneficial, especially for okay, if you're a team, like the Packers are the prime example with this, from my opinion. If you bring in a rookie kicker, why not have a guy who has had success at the league for a long time and maybe even understands how the winds swirl a little bit in certain stadiums, like Lambeau? Why not have that insight?
At least as a consultant.
Right.
It seems somewhat logical. I'm curious if why not do that?
And maybe I'm overthinking it. I don't know, but it feels like because we went through that trend, right? Where teams were looking for, oh, we got to get the kickers who can bomb it. It's like pitchers. We want the guys who can throw the hardest and the fastest, maybe not necessarily go the distance or go the longest. We've heard baseball people talk about this, like pitching is struggling a little bit because people just want to throw hard, they want to throw fast, and the accuracy isn't there.
Some teams do have like a kicking assistant or a coach like that, but it's like 3. And oddly, as we're having this discussion, back in September, the Washington Post had a story. Most NFL teams don't have dedicated kicking coaches. Washington Post has a pretty hard paywall, so you have to have a subscription to read the story. But that's actually a current question. So why is that not the case? Do a little digging into it, but most teams have decided that's not worthy of having. I guess in the Packers case, maybe it's a fundamental organizational theory of, no, we don't need a kicking coach. The special teams coach will take care of everything.
You know, and that's where I'd be like, okay, but you're bringing in Robert Saleh as a consultant for your offense, even though he's a defensive coordinator by trade.
And that also may be availability.
Well, yeah, it's available, but at least explore it. Like I would, if you think that's a benefit to your team to help out, especially if you are going to invest another pick on a young rookie kicker, give him the tools to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like you almost need to bring in a kicker that's been on a couple different teams and he's got a few years under his belt before you can really get him going.
Yeah.
At this point in time, because teams are so quick now to move on from him.
And maybe that's also part of the reason why you don't have a kicking coach. You're like, well, we just got another guy. You can axe this guy and we'll bring in someone else in week 7.
But you'll have to axe that guy after he's screwed up and lost you some games.
That's the problem. But I guess maybe they figure that's better for that. But I'm kind of with you. Unless I see a strong reason to not do it, it makes more sense to have a coach who could get someone who could be good for the entirety of the season and have that kicker be around for multiple seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I don't know if it's just the point where kickers don't want to do that because they want to try to extend their careers and play. I don't know.
It's a good question. And I don't know the answer. But would that help the Packers? Probably, but I guess it depends on who you have.
Well, and that's where I don't know if you bring in Sebastian Janikowski. I'm just throwing a name out there.
Yeah.
Would that be a benefit? I don't know. But, to me, again, it's like, okay, Mason kicked there for double-digit years. He understands how the wind flows in Lambeau and all that sort of stuff. That, to me, would just be like a no-brainer at that point.
I mean,
or a Robbie Gould.
Maybe they don't want to, which I can't imagine they'd all collectively be like, nah. But maybe Mason Crosby doesn't want to be a coach.
And that's the thing. Mason Crosby may not, and these kickers may not. And that's perfectly fine. But, like, if Jay Feely, who was doing TV stuff and all that, said, hey, let's do it, I'd entertain it. Mm-hmm. Does he even still do the TV stuff? Do they? I don't think they do. They have that?
I
don't watch CBS that much.
I think he does. I want to say I saw him relatively recently, but he was on the number 6 team last year.
Okay. All right. Maybe he does. So I don't know. But
yeah.
By the way, what did you think of Brady's? Did you watch the game?
Just a little bit, because right now we're at the point where I got it on an antenna in one room. So if I'm in a different room, and then because we don't stream it anymore, so I got to go back to the old school style of watching. But I did watch a little bit. My first reaction was, is Greg Olsen doing the game? Because of the sound of his voice. If we're just a little bit, I was like, oh my gosh, no, that's Tom Brady. Whoa, I was not expecting his sound to be that way. I thought the little bit that I saw, I thought his approach was pretty good. There was nothing that was making me go, Granted, again, small sample size. And then once the game got out of hand, I'm like, why am I even going to bother to watch? What did you think?
First half, he sucked. Second half, he was better.
Okay.
Why I say that too was first half, First of all, the whole Brian Branch thing, which I found hilarious too, because I was wondering it too, and people were awful announcing tweeted it.
Yep.
You know what I'm talking about, where
Yep.
he's like, that should not be, and I'm like, but you watch the replay and it was a bad take in my opinion.
Mhm.
But then he kept like he was saying, the Packers center, they've got Jacob Monk in there now because I'm like, no, no, and finally he realized, oh no, that's Jenkins. So I mean, stuff like that. There was stuff but second half, this is where I want. There was a particular drive, and this is what I want to hear from a guy like Tom Brady, who is the perceived GOAT, where he was talking about Jordan Love's play and talking about situational football when you have to know to throw it away, when you have to know to survive and live another down, or when to try to be aggressive. That's the stuff I want to hear from a guy like Tom Brady. Like the quarterback position stuff. Like, obviously, that's a guy who's played in a lot of big games for a long time. I want to hear the input from specifically the quarterback position or offense. Like, he was very critical of the play calls by Matt LaFleur, kind of the questioning, 4th and 1, why running it there and then doing this. That's the stuff I want to hear and the reasons why. So I thought he did a better job in that in the second half.
Good.
First half, it was a little bit of a struggle. But I'll give it another shot.
Okay, that's good. I want him to be good. I don't want this to be like, oh wow, we pushed out Greg Olson. And that wasn't Fox wanting to do it. It was an opportunity that came to them.
And the thing is too, and I've said this before, for my color commentators, I want to learn something.
Yes.
I want to learn. Like, it's you got a play-by-play guy for a reason, but I want to learn from the other guy.
Mhm.
Greg Olson does a fantastic job at that. And that's what I want Tom Brady. If he's the GOAT, give us a little bit of a peek in the brain of the GOAT. You know what I mean?
And he had to build his way up as a quarterback as well. Anyway, he wasn't a Heisman Trophy winner coming right in and immediately took the league by I mean, I know it was relatively quickly once he took over from Bledsoe in 01, but he had to build into Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
So, in quotes.
But they do need to knock off the commercials.
Yes. I saw that a few days ago. I'm like, still?
Yeah. Just
What?
stop.
We look, there is, I think, of football fans and even casual sports fans about a 100% familiarity with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to convince us anymore. We know, we get it.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. All right, we got to take a quick break here. We went a little long, but that's okay. So we'll do that and be back here in just a few minutes. Really quick, just a couple of baseball notes here before we get to some picks and predicts. Got to take another break just to kind of catch up here and get to our picks and predicts here. But so Shohei Ohtani did have surgery to fix a torn labrum in his shoulder, which, again, the fact that he still played was pretty remarkable, even though you could tell he was off, right? He was a little off, a little bit off there.
Yes.
But this is what I appreciate too about Major League Baseball. World Series over with. Boom. Let's get right to the offseason. No extending this thing, man.
Hot stove.
Hot stove right away. So you've got all of your lists out there for who the top free agents potentially are going to be and all that good stuff. You got awards coming down. I was a little surprised Matt Arnold was selected Executive of the Year.
I was too.
A little bit. I'm happy, but I was a little surprised that they actually did it.
They didn't do the Stearns thing.
No, he didn't even finish in the top 3.
Huh.
It was the Guardians guy was second, I believe. Who was third? Oh, I blanked. I'll have to double check it. Oh, the Royals guy was second, I think, and then the Guardians guy was third.
Makes
So,
sense.
So, got to imagine Pat Murphy's still going to be manager of the year, I think. I would hope.
so.
I would hope.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, you got all these dates going on here. The weird thing, this is one thing too that's confusing with me with baseball. Like a lot of people were freaking out with the Brewers thing about Devin Williams, that they didn't pick up his option. Like, what? But he's still on the roster because arbitration.
Right.
And it's straight up, it's a business of sports. It's a really mini business of sports thing. They're trying to get him at a cheaper level because he missed a big chunk of the season last year.
That's what's going to happen with a lot of these players. They do it because, well, they can.
And that's honestly, it's probably going to piss off the player. That's why they don't like arbitration, right? I mean, Brewers, we know, have a history of being a little sketchy when it comes to arbitration. Corbin Burns.
Yeah.
So, but it's a tool in the toolbox for some of these other teams out there with lower payrolls, and they got to try to find ways to save as much money as they possibly can.
I would like to think the players are clear-eyed about this, but there's a certain amount of, in a good way, ego to being that good of a baseball player. So you're going to think, hey, I'm worthy of being paid more.
I know it's not Brewers, but I'm actually kind of curious to see how David Stearns approaches this offseason, because he, all the years he was with the Brewers, came up with Houston down there, analytics and that sort of thing. I'm really curious to kind of watch how he approaches this offseason now with a bigger checkbook, because I know on MLB.com they got a piece there where the league is expecting Juan Soto, pretty much a 2-horse race between New York and New York, Mets and the Yankees. So I'm really curious to see how David Stearns kind of transitions. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I got almost a blank checkbook now. Does that change how he approaches things?
Probably to a degree. Like this is what he gets by being in the number 1 market in the country. Had to reset the team some, but now some of these contracts come off. He's got a little bit more opportunity. I mean, his instinct, I think, historically would have been to build around the edges, but that's what he had available to him. Yet he did make some pretty big splashes even in Milwaukee. So I expect him to make a splash, or to try to make a splash for Juan Soto. Soto's going to go for the biggest amount of money available.
Yep.
Is Steve Cohen going to say, yep, you are going to, you can spend as much money as you want, get Juan Soto? I'm sure that's what he's saying.
Right.
Will that actually happen? I don't know. Is there some third team out there? I think it's probably Mets or Yankees for Soto. So yeah, fascinating what Stearns does if Juan Soto does not go to the Mets.
Right. I was just going to say one name that's been apparently generating some trade buzz at GM meetings, going back to him, is Devin Williams. The Brewers are believed to be open to dealing Williams as he enters his contract year. And while many teams will be seeking bullpen help this offseason, one American League executive wondered if trading Williams before the season would be the best way for Milwaukee to maximize its return. Quote, "It's hard to put what his absolute value is. He's had some health issues, and while it seems like he's over them, they were still there. How does that affect his market? Look at the history of closers getting traded this time of year. Are they better off waiting until the trade deadline?" And another exec says, "All it takes is one motivated team. If the missing piece for your team is the closer that's going to put you over the top, you're going to win the deal." So let me ask you this really quick. The Brewers trade Devin Williams. If you're a Brewers fan, what's your reaction? Do you trust Matt Arnold because you saw the Corbin Burns one? How that went down? Or ah, all right. So back to the question: if the Brewers trade Devin Williams, do Brewers fans react in anger, or do they kind of give him a little bit of trust considering how the Corbin Burns trade went down? And maybe to an extent, Josh Hader a little bit. The timing of the Josh Hader one was just what sucked. So
the evidence means they probably shouldn't be as angry. I think they will because it's another bigger name that's leaving in a relatively short period of time.
I think Devin gets traded this offseason. I really do.
I would not be surprised if that happens either. I don't think Devin Williams is with the Brewers next September/October. I'll put it that way. So if you're clear-headed about where the Brewers are at and where they can be, given their situation, their financial situation, their market situation, then you should be okay with the move. I would favor it. I think they can. I trust that they will be able to develop more pitching. They have a track record of doing that. If Matt Arnold is executive of the year, you got to figure, well, if he's getting that honor from folks in baseball, that he can't suck by getting rid of Devin Williams. I mean, that's the reaction of, if that would be the reaction of Brewers fans if that were to happen. This is not fair to Williams, but there's probably going to be a sizable percentage, if a minority, that would be like, well, yeah, see what happened in the playoffs against the Mets. So that's good. Get rid of him now because he's not good anymore. Well, because he got banged up at just the wrong time. Same happened to Emmanuel Clase. Are we going to say Emmanuel Clase is a bum now? Yeah, I know he has one of the worst, was it like wins over probability? I can't remember the exact stat, but it's one of the worst all time for playoff closers, right up there with Mitch Williams in 93. Bob Stanley in 86. Those are some bad ones. Emmanuel Clase was like in getting Cy Young discussion this season. So that's a small sample size. Maybe it's understandable given the nature of playoffs versus regular season. The point is, you'd rather have Devin Williams than not. You'd also rather maybe by that same token, you'd rather get rid of Devin Williams when you can get more for him to keep regenerating your team, as long as this sport is not going, or this league is not going to have a salary cap.
All right, let's take our final break, and we got some picks and predicts coming up here. So we'll do that last break, and then we'll be back to wrap up things after these couple minutes. All right, let's wrap things up with some picks and predicts brought to you by the Elbow Room, located right next to Banbury Place in Eau Claire. It is Wednesday, which is also trivia night. So if you're looking for something to do, head on over to the Elbow Room. Again, located right next to the Banbury Place in Eau Claire. We'll make this pick for our good buddy Mark, who chimed in a little bit earlier. For your picks and predicts, MAC action tonight. Ohio U Bobcats, Kent State's.
The MAC.
Yeah. What are you rolling with for this one?
Who is that again in the MAC?
What?
I was all excited to say the
Ohio
MAC.
Bobcats and Kent State.
What are the records?
Well, okay, I'll just tell you. Kent State's 0-8 and Ohio's 5-3.
Ohio.
Yeah.
No one's getting off the schneid on this one.
Yeah, Ohio's favored by 17.5 on this one. So yeah, I think it's safe to say Bobcats.
Yeah.
Plus, I know a couple. There's a couple connections I know with Ohio Bobcats.
That's right.
Couple Medford alums played college football there, and Peter King also went to college there.
That's true. That's true.
So, shall we do some NBA games?
Sure.
Let's do some National Basketball Association games here. Wednesday, we've got Orlando at the Pacers.
I'm gonna go Pacers in this one.
I'll go Pacers as well. How about this one? Golden State at Boston.
Oh, NBA Finals rematch from a couple years ago. I'm gonna go with the Celtics.
I'm going to go Celtics too, and they are favored by 6.5. So no double-digit favorite for Boston for once.
Wow.
San Antonio at Houston.
Go Rockets.
I'll go Rockets too. Let's do Oklahoma City at Denver. How about this? OKC at Denver. OKC 7.5-point favorites.
I think Denver ends the undefeated start.
I was actually gonna go Denver too. So how about that?
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Same.
Miami at Phoenix.
I'll go Phoenix.
I'm gonna go with the Fighting Mike Budenholzers.
Go Buds.
Go Buds. Oh, I miss you, Bud. I miss you right now. Let's go 76ers at the Clippers.
Oh boy. Yeah, I'll go Clips.
I'm gonna go with the Clippers too, even though they're only favored by 1.5. So that's gonna do it for.
Do we know what the home point advantage is on the point spread for basketball for the NBA?
That's a good question.
Like the old 3-point, which is now
is it like 2.5 or something for the NFL?
Yeah.
NBA home court point advantage. Let me see if I can find it.
Which of course that gets thrown up in the air a little bit just with the LA Clippers because they're in
Says
the dome.
Home court advantage is usually valued at 3 to 5 points.
Oh, so basically they're saying the 76ers would be more likely to win that game.
So let's if it's between 3 and 5, can we just call it 4?
But that would be the average, yeah.
Yeah. Can we just call it 4?
Yeah.
So make it easy on ourselves.
They're saying the 76ers are better.
Okay. Well, each to their own.
Clippers 1-4 into a dome thus far. They're also not expected to be that great this year either. So.
No. But
they got on that before we're like, they no home court advantage. Well, if your team sucks, that's not going to help.
They got a sweet arena though.
I do love that thing. The wall, yes. I'm glad a team did something kind of different with their arena.
Yeah, I do too.
It.
So a little college kind of feel.
Yes.
College basketball kind of feel.
I
hope
like we see more stuff kind of like that going down the road.
I do too. Get a little bit more involved in these NBA games. Make it a little bit more fan centric. Right?
Yeah. Instead of, hey, we got club seats underneath the lower level. That's where everyone hangs out.
I know this has been a little old here, but we only got a minute left, and I didn't get a chance to ask you last time. But there was that report. I don't think it's going to happen, right? What are your thoughts on Milwaukee trying to get a WNBA team?
Good. I mean, there's a lot of room for expansion. They're on 15, 16?
Yeah.
Total. So yeah, you're thinking like MLS as the nearest example of a rapidly expanding league. Well, they got all the way up towards 30. So there's a lot of room for the WNBA that keeps potential competitors, which is still a thing, but it's not going to be for too long. I know there's that 3-on-3 league. I think that's trying to get it out. That can coexist, but a rival league won't. Take advantage of that. You've got plenty of passionate Bucks fans, good facilities around there.
Do you bring back the Doe's name? I don't know if you do or not.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was
you could. They'll probably do something different.
Yeah, I think they do something different.
Yeah. But I like it. I mean, it may be a little bit before they get one.
Yeah. Looking at some of the other ones, cities that were involved, I don't think it'd be like the first round, if you will. like the first selections.
Right. And maybe they're looking to places that have like valid
Mhm.
college basketball programs. There's not as much women's college basketball wise D1 level
Mhm.
around, but we'll see. I think they get it eventually.
Get it? Trade for Caitlin Clark. Boom. Success.
That
All
would
right.
work.
Yeah, that's going to do it for us. DP, Danitz, they're up next. Have yourself a good rest of your day on this Wednesday. We'll be back at it again tomorrow morning, just past 6. Talk to you then.